Welcome back, everybody. We are the 1867 Sports Show, Canada's favorite sports podcast. I think that's fair to say by now, right, Kyle?
I think it's universally known, to be honest.
I mean, if it's not universally known by now, we just have to wait longer. That's all.
Eventually, it will ring true.
But anyways, welcome back, everybody. Tonight, again, we are on a very special episode because not only do we have an action-packed episode for you, but it is episode number Bo Bichette, plus Curtis Rourke, plus Catherine Daou, plus Jonathan David, plus Tracy McGrady tonight. For those of you who are keeping track at home, that equals 35. You like how I snuck in all of those different categories, Kyle?
That was a whole lot of mathematizing right there.
And again, I mentioned that it's an action-packed episode. The reason why we had to go with that many people leading into this episode is because we really do have a ton of topics to go over, all of which have a tie to said person in the intro.
A veritable smorgasbord of topics we have tonight.
Veritable smorgasbord. It's like a Canadian steak breakfast, steak and eggs, right? Like you got a little bit of everything mixed in there. Yeah, that's what we got for you tonight.
Chicken eggs, the 2-ingredient breakfast. Excellent reference.
Shut up. I meant to say lumberjack breakfast. Steak and eggs came out. Anyways, I tried to Canadianize it a little bit, and yes, I kind of cornered myself into a very precarious situation. But anyways, before we get kicked off with kind of everything we want to talk about, maybe Mr. Skinner, give us an update on the status of your cough that's going on, because apparently there's a pretty big virus happening on your side of Orleans.
Not great, Bob. to borrow a saying. Yeah, well, for all the parents out there who know, it was back to school week last week.
Yep.
And what happens every back to school week? Well, guess what? The incubators of germs start touching and coughing and sneezing and picking their nose and touching things, and all those germs end up coming home. And yours truly, I feel fine, but at the end of the day, I have a cough that will not go away, and I will be muting myself and or trying to avoid hacking a lung directly into the microphone for most of tonight's episode. So bear with me, folks.
Hey, Aqualung. It's the parental cough. I think every parent knows that you've got a cough from September until June, and that's pretty much a standard thing across the parental landscape. So all good, man. Like I said, we'll let you kind of lead the show tonight, and hopefully get your vocal cords a good workout. But
yeah, that's usually how it is, right? Okay, you know what? You have an injury. Therefore, the way to overcome said injury is to use that appendage more.
We're not easing you back in here. We're throwing you right into the thick of it, and if you can't swim, you're gonna sink. All so
right. Good thing I had my multi-ingredient steak and egg breakfast to get ready.
Anyone who wants to try it, it's delicious. Just make sure you got all the ingredients, because if you don't, it's a mess.
Grocery list.
But again, lots to cover tonight. Maybe, just kind of capping off something that we talked about last week, maybe give us an update on how we're doing in the Paralympics, Kyle.
Well, it was a glorious adventure, quick and dirty, wrapped up a whole lot faster than the Olympics themselves there. So we did well. 29 medals, right? Perfect. We had 10 gold, 9 silver, 10 bronze. Quick golf clap for all the Canadian Paralympic athletes.
Let's go.
Canada so well. And, lots of very heartwarming stories there as well, too, right? You had the Humboldt Broncos athlete who ended up participating in the kayak sprint, and just all sorts of good stuff. A first ever medal for Canada in sitting volleyball as well, too. So, kudos to, of course, it was the ladies who did it, right? So
always
just carrying Canada on the international stages. So, again, we said it before, third largest sporting event on the planet. It doesn't get nearly the recognition it deserves. So I'm happy we're kicking tonight's episode off by you know what, I'll even give them a second little golf clap.
Yeah,
all the hard work that they did, kudos to them.
fantastic performance by all of our Paralympians. And again, echoing Kyle's sentiment. I mean, the women seem to, kick it up a notch whenever it's on the international sporting stage in Canada. So, obviously they came to play. And, again, I think overall we're seeing a very, good shift in the right direction, both in the Olympics and the Paralympics. So, hey, let's keep her going.
It takes a certain kind of gal to live in Canada is clearly what we've learned from all these international events there, because they do quite well when they're pitted against other countries.
Yeah. And, speaking of gals, pretty monumental announcement that was just made in the PWHL, because we finally have some team names, Kyle.
We do. I've got some thoughts.
Yeah. So for those of you who weren't paying attention, the PWHL last season in their inaugural year started out by just being known as whatever city they were playing in. So the Minnesota Hockey Club, and then the Ottawa Hockey Club, and so on and so forth. They just rebranded themselves. Everyone has their own name now, their own moniker. You could say logo, I guess, because they're not really logos per se, but
they got logos. They got logos.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down.
Some of them were created with Microsoft Paint, but they've got logos.
But now, I was just gonna rattle through the names, and then we'll go over to you, because obviously you've got some doings and transpirants to get off your chest here. But starting off, we got the Boston Fleet, the Minnesota Frost, the Victoire de Montréal, the New York Sirens, the Ottawa Charge, and the Toronto Scepters. So, initial impressions.
It's definitely a mixed bag. And even some of, all right, I don't even know where to start with this, because I've got so many opinions on the matter here. There's really three things that you need to break down with these, right? There's the name itself, there's the logo, and then there's kind of like all the little add-ons, which, the lettering, the font that they pick, the color scheme, the everything that's going to actually go into the jerseys and all the branding, right? And for some teams, nailed it on every front. Montreal hit it out of the park with their logo, their design, their everything. Go figure, right? It looks like they invested money into it. Other teams, it seems like an intern was in charge of this project there. So, you've got the Montreal Victoire. They're clearly, and you can, this isn't just my opinion. You can go on whatever social media platform you want. It shows how far women's sports have come over the last decade, to see the kind of reaction that, in 1990, if this had have come out, would have just flown under the radar. It would have been page 6 of the sports page. So the fact that everyone and their grandmother for at least a couple of hours this week perused a PWHL website or social media post or whatever, like, bodes well for the league. So that's a positive, even if some of the logos leave something to be desired.
Yeah.
So Montreal is kind of unanimously the class of everything that came out there. They're at the top. Minnesota, I love the name.
Yep.
Right? Minnesota Frost. Again, it's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. And, rolls off the tongue. Sounds like a real sports team. And
that is by far my favorite name out of the group.
But then the logo came out, and it's like, well, it's a giant F, which is kind of what you would give that design grade right there, which is kind of ironic. Like, there just didn't seem to be any kind of real design elements other than this is the letter F, and we added a few little ice, features to it.
This team brought to you by Sesame Street.
Absolutely. So again, mixed bag on that one there. I think ultimately their color scheme and their actual like fonts and all that they chose, I don't mind it so much, but it's just that logo just landed like a dead cat, right? So
landed like a dead cat.
Yeah.
So Kyle and his dead cat viewing apparently knows how hard they land, but carry on.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty. Let me tell you that.
They're having their steak and egg breakfast, and they're just keeling over on you.
Yeah. Toronto Scepters are a bit of a weird one in the sense of, like, what does a scepter really have to do with Toronto and even the logo, like it kind of looks like almost like a third world country medical pharmacy sign. Like I don't know. It didn't turn my crank, that's for sure.
What is it? Turn your crank, Jesus. um,
Keep it PG here. Come on.
But what is it with Toronto teams and just whiffing on every single team name that they can come up with? I mean,
Well, there was no
it's
dinosaur movie that came out recently that they could base it off of. So
I mean, there's plenty of dinosaurs in the Jurassic World Dominion or whatever the hell the latest one was. So they can definitely go down that road. But I mean, again, this is just a complete miss from the Toronto market. And I mean, I don't know if they're letting the fans name them and like there's a kids poll that's happening. I have no idea. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it's been well received on social media. And I don't see many players coming out and saying, I love the name. I can't wait to play for the Scepters this year.
yeah. Yeah. So again, that's one of those ones where incomplete grade you can kind of give because
It's
it's
not
like,
even incomplete. No, it's an F. Like that's an F.
well, what I'm
100%.
genuinely curious about, right, with some of these, because obviously we've got names, we've got logos, we've got color schemes. We don't have jerseys yet, right? So what I'm wondering with the Scepters is, do they kind of pivot after the backlash they've received, and that ends up being like a shoulder crest, and they end up moving to something else? Because if that's a shoulder crest, I can see that, right? Like that's not something, but as the focal point of like an emblem on the center of a jersey, that leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm genuinely curious to see kind of what they do with that one there.
Yeah.
Boston Fleet. Again, it ties. I like the fact that Fleet ties in Boston Harbor, all of that. If you actually look at the nuances of it, it's a sideways anchor. They've got some waves in it. I don't mind it.
I was just gonna say, if you flip it around 90 degrees, what are you looking at, Kyle?
Big old anchor.
The Hartford Whalers jersey uniform.
Yeah, it's
I love it. I love it.
It's the classic. All right, here's my homework. Just copy it, but change it up a little so that they don't know. So, and the Hartford Whalers logo is one of the all-time greatest logos of. Don't want to spoil one of our future segments coming up here, but it is one of my favorite, at least near and dear to my heart logos. So don't mind that one at all. It's kind of up there with Montreal, not quite on the same level, but it's pretty close in terms of compared to the rest of them, what came out in my mind.
Yeah. And how many times are you going to see the Hartford Whalers up 10-0 on the Canucks? I love how you got that reference. That's fantastic. For any of you millennials, that's definitely a throwback to the fantastic cult classic, you want to say? Mallrats. So any of you who don't know what we're talking about, go watch Mallrats. You'll understand what the reference is.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing you off all of your thoughts
God.
here. I love it.
I barely have a voice here. I'm trying to keep it on the rails, and you're just like, all right, here we go. What kind of silent Bob and Jay can we throw at you at this point?
What kind of early 90s movie references can I throw at you?
The New York Sirens. So this one threw me off so much because, again, I saw the name and I figured sirens. Okay, they're tying into like kind of mermaid sirens of the sea or something like that, and being like, that's kind of cool, right? Like some sort of female mythic creature. Nope. Just the fact New York has a whole lot of ambulances firing up and down the streets, I guess. They're like that one, the logo, the name, the fact that it's got the weird, like, I don't know if it's supposed to be sound or like light vibrations at the side. Like, I have no idea what they were trying to accomplish here. And they, again, were one of those franchises that kind of got dragged on social media after the release of it. And I don't think there's too many people tripping over themselves to line up at the merch store when those things go on sale.
No thoughts on this one. Proceed.
All right, then. Thank you for tuning into the Kyle Skinner monologue tonight, folks.
Well, you get mad at me for interrupting you. Now you're getting mad at me for letting you talk. What do you want from me?
Oh my God. The Ottawa Charge. I know you're going to have an opinion on this one because I got lots here. Why don't you start us off and I'll hop in from the top ropes there.
I'm actually okay with the name. I don't mind it, but I think that if they were to write this on an exam, they would get charged with plagiarism by anyone who's associated with the Calgary Flames
or Cleveland Cavaliers.
Or Cleveland Cavaliers. Because if you look at the name version of this, it has very, very similar traits to the Calgary Flames Club. If you look at the logo of it, it has very, very similar traits to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So it's not that I don't like the name, because I do. I just thought that they really should have or could have been more creative with their design. But again, Ottawa seems to have either one or the other. Either they knock the name out of the park and they just absolutely blow it with the jersey design logo, or vice versa, right? Because when you look at the last one with the Ottawa Red Blacks, not crazy about the name, jersey scheme fantastic, right? And then now we've got this. So let's hope the Ottawa Black Bears, when they come in, have a very good jersey scheme to go with their awesome logo.
Can't wait for them to show up as brown bears and polar bears and panda bears. That's their
damn it.
You know what? With this one, I genuinely kind of took my time with it. I let it digest. My knee-jerk reaction was hate everything. Hate the name, hate the colors, hate the logo, hate the whatever.
It's Ottawa based, so of course you're going to hate it.
Yeah. So
the most self-loathing Ottawa fan in the world.
I'm a realistic person. is what it really is. So I let it marinate, and you know what? The name is growing on me. I actually like the lettering and the font and even the color scheme that they chose. So you know what? All of that I can live with. It might be one of the worst logos I have ever seen across any sport. And I am not alone in that thing.
It's weird.
You want to talk about, you look at all those cities, right? Don't have the population of Minnesota in front of me, but I venture a guess more than 1 million. So Ottawa is the smallest market out of all of them. And I think they had 10 times the amount of vitriol pouring out of their fan base regarding the logo compared to any other market. Like, it is awful. If you haven't seen it yet, Google it right now. Stop what you're doing. Pull over to the side of the road if you're driving right now. Pull out your phone and look at this image. It is god awful.
Like, were they going with a C that resembled an O as well? That's kind of escaping something.
Like,
is that what?
Everything about it is so poorly done.
I love the speed line. I love the speed lines in the back though.
Oh my good Lord. Like it's the most like early 70s. We don't know what we're doing. Like, oh, let's get Fred. He knows how to operate one of those computer doohickeys there to try and throw something together here. Like it is genuinely done on Windows 95 Microsoft Paint. It is god awful. Whomever, I'm going to make it my mission to figure out who was the design firm that came up to this, because I would love to someday unearth the footage of them trying to sell this logo behind closed doors, and then everyone standing up in unison and being like, bravo, sir, well done. I love it. Let's slap this on merch. It is horrible. Like you said, it's the like bastard love child of the Cleveland Cavaliers and Calgary Flames, which probably should have been left at the orphanage, if I'm being completely honest with you here. Like, there's no redeeming factors about it. And then they kind of tried to play it off today with the oh, this is what the the C stands for, and the speed lines show forward momentum, and it's a spinning disc, and that. It's like, there's no amount of lipstick you can put on this pig to make it even remotely presentable. So I don't even care if it's a shoulder patch. The thing needs to get absolutely burned to the ground. So if you're again, I have no idea how much money they've sunk into this. Maybe it's kind of a moot point by now, but I would put my mortgage on the line that Ottawa is the first team that has a rebrand or incorporates a third jersey that they wear more often than their home and away jerseys out of any of the other founding teams here.
If you have to explain your logo to your fan base,
On day one.
it is not a good day one. Yeah, it is not a good logo. So let's just leave it at that and move on to something more positive, because you mentioned it earlier, but there are a lot of great logos out there that have kind of gone the way of the dodo over the course of, sports history. Anyone that stick out to you that you really just wish were back in the swing of things and you got to see regularly on a, international scale, on a professional scale, amateur scale, what logo sticks out to you?
Oh my God. All right. We need to do our whole episode on this here. So the following 3 hours will be where we run through the forgotten logos of old. But I think honestly, if we're looking at all of the leagues, the NFL has probably done the best job of reincorporating good old jersey schemes that fans wanted in recent years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at the Philadelphia Eagles bringing back the Kelly Green jerseys. Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even though it's from a period of time that franchise probably would love to forget, bringing back the creamsicle,
Yeah.
and all of that. So, they're definitely leading the way in that regard. But if I'm being honest, a lot of the logos that I would love to see come back are mostly NHL based because there are so many good ones that, like you say, have just fallen by the wayside. So before I get into the ones that I like, the one that really sticks in my craw because they've tried to bring it back, but they've now absolutely butchered it with the color scheme that they used. One of the best logos is the Anaheim Ducks original logo that came.
Yep.
That when they were rocking the maroon and the teal and the white and the silver, absolute chef's kiss right there. But this new orange version that they've brought, I cannot wrap my head around. Some people love it, which I don't understand. They clearly weren't born when the originals were actually being worn, and Paul Kariya and Timo Solani were flying up the ice, rocking those things. They're looking absolutely like $1 million in them.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that they went full orange, right? Even to the pants. I think I could almost get behind it if they went, all right, gloves are black, pants are black, orange socks, orange top. But right now it is too much orange. It's a bunch of pylons flying around out there, which drives me insane because I absolutely hate the logo that they moved to, where it's like the least creative thing you could have done. Like, oh, it's kind of a duck foot D, and then it just says ducks, which they moved to in kind of the Ryan Getzlaff, Corey Perry era there, right? So
yeah,
they moved from the greatest logo to a crappy logo, and then we're going to bring back the original logo, but now we're going to do a crappy color scheme. And the poo-pooers out there will be like, well, there were some concerns, Disney, the rights, the logo, the data. It's like, clearly they got the rights back to be able to put it out there because the actual crest doesn't change other than a few oranges in the eyes and whatnot here. So that's not going to hold up in court as far as, oh, I changed it 3%, therefore I can now use the Nike swoosh because it's at a different angle, right? Like, so they clearly have the rights. Why would you not just go back to the originals, which were universally loved there?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned pylon and poo-poo, which is very indicative of the way that Anaheim has been playing the last few years. So maybe that's why they've gone that way, Kyle.
Perhaps save a little bit of money out there.
Yeah, I mean, I love the old iteration of the Anaheim Ducks. And when they were the Mighty Ducks, that was when they had the best logo, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks.
Wow. They've lost a little might over the years there, some would say.
Speaking of unique color schemes and unbelievable logo, but terrible franchise, I'm going Canadian here. I'm going with the Vancouver Grizzlies.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
One of the best logos, color schemes, and third jerseys that I've ever seen in any sport. whoever designed those, again, let's get a golf clap for the designer of the Vancouver Grizzlies original jersey and logo, because you guys were just absolutely on point with that. The teal, which was very big in the early to mid 90s, but again, they used it very tastefully. They didn't go overboard. San Jose Sharks. But they also incorporated, that awesome Grizzlies logo. Like, I think everybody who looks at that, they remember what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think every time you see the Memphis Grizzlies wearing those throwbacks, I think the players actually love wearing those more than their jerseys they have now.
1,000%, because they've got no identity with their current jerseys right now, right? Like the kind of sky blue and white. Like,
it's a blue bear with yellow eyes.
Yeah,
is essentially what it is.
Whatever, Memphis there. So you know what we need to do for the next episode there? I'll get myself a throwback Vancouver, like Ja Morant jersey, and we can get you a Big Country Bryant Reeves jersey there.
I would rock the number 50 Big Country jersey like it's no tomorrow. But yeah, Vancouver Grizzlies old 1995-96 inaugural jersey is home and away my pick for most missed logo in history.
Yeah. For me, again, sticking with hockey here, right? We already mentioned them, so we kind of cannibalized this one, but the Hartford Whalers, and honestly, you could give me any version of it. The green, like Gordie Howe era one. To me, my favorite one, the one that looks the cleanest to me, is their whites. But even their blues were
the navy blues
phenomenal. Like, all three iterations could not have been and even stood the test of time. Here we are 2024 and we're still talking about them. Like, unbelievable quality there, just from the logo, the color scheme. And I think what maybe the Grizzlies could kind of be the exception to it there, because around the collar you kind of had the indigenous kind of, I don't know what you would call it there, lettering or whatnot, but so it had a little more to it than most would. But really, a lot of the things that we're going to probably be talking about, they were so good because they were so simple, right? I think we've just gotten so far away from the simplicity of what goes into making a clean kit that now we're into these weird, like, we're going all orange, tangerine from tips to toes there. Like, so yeah, those were absolutely up there for me, 100%.
If I were to categorize that jersey, it would be classy.
Yeah,
it's very, very classy jersey. And again, Hartford Whalers is definitely a great throwback. I'm going to stick with that theme and go to the mid 90s in the NHL for one of my favorite jerseys. And again, you're saying American. I'm keeping with the theme of the show and being Canadian. The Quebec Nordiques.
They were on my list. They're on my list.
Who doesn't love the powder blue and red? I mean, you look at how fantastic those jerseys popped when you had hockey cards when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you got a Quebec Nordiques card, you knew exactly where it was from, who the player was, because they were so identifiable. So that to me is a definition of exactly what a uniform and logo should look like. Is color scheme and logo have to mesh well and not have, like you're mentioning with the Anaheim jersey, having a great one and a terrible other. Yeah. You have to have everything kind of collaborating to make that great logo. And that's exactly what the Quebec Nordiques jerseys used to be.
Yeah. And, again, sticking with hockey, and fine, paint me into a corner here. I'll leave Canada alone. I'll stick with the Americans here. But you kind of see it now in some of their, I think it's their third jersey, kind of like shoulder patches, and they might have even worn them at certain times here. But before the baseball team of the Colorado Rockies, there was a hockey team called the Colorado Rockies, and they had a very, very clean looking logo. The uniform itself, I can kind of take it or leave it, but in terms of just logo itself, again, simple, clean, just a C on the mountains, but you knew exactly what you were getting into whenever you saw it. You associated it instantly with that team. It's not what the heck sport do these guys play? It was absolutely identifiable. And again, the fact that they're bringing it back and incorporating it into their modern jerseys kind of shows you the endearing, lasting effect of it there too, because The easy thing to kind of say here is every single one of the Canadian hockey franchises, their old logos were probably better, right? I don't think there's
Yeah.
anyone that's in love with the kind of orca, like sea Canuck going on right now. Everyone loves the flying skate way better,
Yeah.
and like the color schemes and everything. And the Senators, thank God, went back to the 2D Centurion there rather than the weird, like what even was it, like a 30-degree angle quasi staring at you look, or even at one point when it was just a black jersey that just said Sens
Yeah.
across the front, like.
So and I was actually going to say this as my last point because I was going to go with the Ottawa side of things. I loved when they brought back their tricolored cream, red, and black jerseys with just the O on the front. Those are my favorite Ottawa Senator jerseys I've ever seen. I don't know why they didn't stick with that. I really hope they bring it back for some type of anniversary and keep it as their third jersey from going forward.
Yeah. Well, I'll go with a non-hockey one here just to finish off. And they actually announced that for this season that they're going to be bringing them back. But thank God the Utah Jazz are going back to the Stockton Malone era here and bringing back the mountains and the purple and like such a better look than just the note, right? And Jazz across the front there. Utah renowned for its jazz scene. So
Yeah. Yeah, and again, like a lot of these jerseys really were indicative of where the team was located, right? You talk about the Vancouver Grizzlies, lots of grizzly bears out in the British Columbia area. You move to Memphis, not too many Grizzlies in the Tennessee area of the world. And this is again why the Utah Jazz make no sense, because where's the place where you expect to hear the least amount of jazz music in the United States?
And then the Jazz moved to Utah where they don't listen to music, and the Minneapolis Lakers moved to Los Angeles where they don't have lakes.
Where there are no lakes, exactly. And again, we talked about basketball before the show. There's a baseball river. Golf clap for you for incorporating basketball after they stole all the gifts that you were going to use for all of these different iterations of responses to me today.
Matt Stone and Trey Parker have just been banned from the gift world apparently now.
But you know what, they'll forever live on in our minds and on this show. So anyways, enough about jerseys. I think we could talk till we're blue in the face about these things. A lot of other things that are happening. And let's go to the football side of things, because there's obviously the start of the NFL, which I think everyone has been very, very much looking forward to, especially on the fantasy football side of things, which I don't know about you, but my week did not start off very well. I'm kind of behind the eight ball in several of my leagues. So hopefully we can pick things back up in week 2. But college football is also in the swing of things. So we mentioned on the show before, there's a lot of Canadian content down in the U.S. right now, whether it be the NCAA or the NFL. A lot of them were in action this weekend. Not a lot of success on the Canadian side of things. A little slow on the Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown front. We're kind of searching around. Like even Stanford's great receiver, who is an underdog Heisman candidate going into this year, Alec Ayamenyor, didn't really have that great of an opening week for Stanford. But I'll tell you who did have a great standout performance playing for his new team in the NCAA. Mr. Curtis Rourke, quarterback for Indiana University. And for those of you who understand the name Rourke, we're not talking about Nathan Rourke. This is his younger brother, Curtis. So Curtis just recently transferred from the University of Ohio to Indiana, obviously going from the MAC to the Big Ten. Played his first game for his new team, and pretty sure they're happy with the results. Came away with a 77-3 victory over Western Illinois. They pulled him at halftime. Yeah, they pulled him at halftime, where he was 15 of 17 for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. So pretty good start to the Curtis Rourke era for Indiana University. So let's get a golf clap for Curtis. Great start to your Indiana career. And again, living up to some big expectations that have been set by your older brother.
Yeah, no, absolutely there. And that's what's supposed to happen when you add someone to your schedule that you're paying to play against, rather than our friends in Notre Dame who would like a do-over from the weekend.
Yeah, there's a few games where there's some surprising results, but again, Notre Dame just seems like the type of team that just has one of these games every year. They're going to go and beat a team like Texas A&M at Texas A&M. They're going to have this big emotional game, and then it comes crashing back down to earth the next week. Every year it happens. So,
I
I
just
mean,
don't understand how all the AP poll voters fall for this every single year. Like,
yeah,
just start them ranked at like 20, have them fall out of the rankings by like week 5, have them come back in and probably finish somewhere in the 15 to 18 range, which is where they really are in the country every single year. Why
it,
we think they're a top 5 team? Like, we've seen this movie 500 times. Like, they never, ever, 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 ever live up to their top 5 billing in my lifetime. I just don't understand it. But hey, I guess that's why I don't have a vote, right? So.
yeah,
And
and I
that,
mean,
ladies and gentlemen, is my thoughts on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on the 1867 Canadian Sports Show, ladies.
Kyle's really taking the Canadian theme, very loosely tonight, referencing all these American-based teams. But yeah, again, focusing on Curtis Rourke's performance, fantastic start. I mean, obviously, this guy is number 1 rated prospect in the CFL Scouting Bureau for a reason. The guy is phenomenal. He's got a great pedigree. And again, going to a conference like the Big Ten with, obviously the diverse schedule that they've got now with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington all joining this year. This is really setting up for a really big stage for a Canadian quarterback to really show out and potentially get a shot like his brother did. So, anyways, we're talking about brothers. Let's go over to another family who had a prominent role in their respective sport, the Staal family, which surprisingly, we had Jordan Staal announce his retirement Eric Staal announced his retirement earlier this year. Now one of his brothers has announced his retirement. Brother Marc has called it a career after 17 fantastic seasons in the NHL. Let's get a golf clap for Marc Staal. A very unheralded defenseman because, again, not putting up a lot of big points, but kind of your quintessential shutdown defenseman. And I mean, I remember watching this guy when he was an 18-year-old playing for Sudbury, and you could see back then, even with his limited offensive prowess, he was going to be a star in the NHL. And I mean, for the most part, up until the latter half of his career, the guy was a top, 15, 20 defenseman in the league?
Well, he's the guy that you put out there every single time the other team's number 1 line comes out, right?
Yeah.
He is never going to be the guy who jumps off the page when you read the box score in the morning, but he would absolutely be, when you're looking at that team at the end of the year, one of the guys that the teammates are probably going to vote as most valuable player to the entire team. So, again, an unheralded player who absolutely was a shutdown defender, stay at home, did all the right things. Any coach who's worth his salt would take 100 Marc Staals on his team any day of the week and be very, very happy with the results. So, like you said, was never going to get drafted because of his offensive prowess. He's not the next Erik Karlsson. He's not the next, Chris Letang, who's going to quarterback a power play and have a boosh bomb from the point or anything like that. But he is 100% worth every single penny that he got paid over the course of his career because of the fact that he was logging hard minutes every single night.
Yeah. And there's a reason why he made as much money as he did. But, you mentioned, coaches being happy. Someone else is really happy today after, secretly inking a very large extension in the NBA. And again, we're weaving in and out of these topics because I told you we had a lot on deck tonight.
Stucking and weaving here. Look at this.
We're going back to the NBA, and someone we've talked about on the show several times just came off of a very long, arduous run in the NBA playoffs and then the Olympics, where he's obviously nursing some type of injury. But Jamal Murray just got an absolutely fabulous extension from the Denver Nuggets. 4 years for over $50 million average annual salary. So let's get a golf clap for Jamal for securing the bag. And then, second of all, what are your thoughts? Is Jamal Murray a max level player who deserves a $50 million a year contract?
Well, first of all, you got to realize the economics of the NBA, where you know what? You need 2 to 3 star players. Otherwise, you are not going to compete. Doesn't matter if you're in the East, the West, whatever division you're in, you are not competing for a title without 2 or 3 max contract players. So you got to spend the money, right? Putting that aside for a moment, though, is Jamal Murray in a vacuum a max level contract player? In today's NBA, he is. In the traditional sense, like if you were to say there's only 15 of these contracts available in the league, no, he is not one of the 15 best players in the league. But to the Denver Nuggets, he is absolutely invaluable because him and Jokic are one of, if not the best pick and roll combo in the entire association. And you can ask whatever rival executive you want, they're in their top 5. If you're going to list a guard big man combo, they're on every single one of those lists. Not to mention
100%.
the fact that this year he absolutely took that next step. He shot, I think it was like 42% from 3. So if you're going to be one of the best pick and roll guys, you're going to have your assists go up and you're going to shoot better than 40% from beyond the 3-point line. That's something that you want to build around. And you got to look at the term of the contract too. This isn't a 10-year contract, right? This is something that they're going to pay him a lot of money in a short period of time. And guess what? That also coincides with Denver's window to compete. Because at the end of the day, you look at Nikola Jokic, he is more than happy to just live the rest of his life in Eastern Europe, race horses, drink beer. Like you never see him happier than when he's back home or when he's celebrating winning a bronze medal and showing up absolutely loaded to accept it at the medal ceremony there as well too. So he is someone who probably could play because of his skill set, right? Like he's not some giant, like, oh my God, Zion Williamson's body is going to break down at some point and it's not going to age gracefully.
Not anymore. See how much weight he's lost?
Guess what? He can put that on in a weekend. Like his friggin' weight fluctuates like a roller coaster.
See, this is why I told Toronto to trade for him last year, because you could have got this version of him
skinny
without getting them beignets in his body.
Yeah. But again, right? Like Jokic is someone whose skill set could play until he's 40 years old. He could legitimately LeBron it, right? And play at a very high level. But he's not going to. And it's not going to be because his body breaks down. It's because honestly, if they go out there and they win another championship in the next 3 seasons, he's probably retiring, early 30s, calling it a career. Like he is not someone who is playing for the fame. He actually dislikes, kind of that American lifestyle. He's said it multiple times. He doesn't understand, the emphasis on sort of that celebrity culture and all of that. He's way happier back home. He is someone who plays in the NBA because it is his job, not because he particularly likes playing in the NBA, but it's the industry that will pay him the most amount of money during his earnings window as a high-level athlete.
It funds his horse racing.
Exactly. He's not going to buy more ponies if he's not making multi-millions there in the Mile High City. So again, you are essentially lining up for the next 4 years, right? Here's Murray that we've got locked in. Here's Jokic, who probably is going to retire or will flirt with retirement in his early 30s. Let's just go all in with those two, build around them, and see if we can take another run. So that's a long-winded way of saying, is Jamal Murray like a top 15 or even 20 player in the NBA? No. But to the Denver Nuggets and their current window to compete, is he worth every single penny of that contract? 100%.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you, because just for the playoffs alone, Jamal Murray's worth that contract, because you know that he steps up in big games. And let's take the Olympics out of it, because again, obviously, he was playing hurt. He wasn't 100%. Denver executives have come out and said he shouldn't even have been playing in the playoffs, let alone the Olympics. Yes. So obviously this guy just wanted to represent his country. He wanted to be there, to be that, big name that could, elevate the Canadian profile. And, we'll just take that aside. You look at when Jamal Murray is performing for the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs when it matters most, this guy could sit out all year and then bring him out for the playoffs, and this guy will step up and be your leading scorer. That's just the way that it's going to be.
Players in NBA history to have 2 or more 50-point games in the playoffs.
Yeah. And like you look at the teams that he does it against, they're always the best teams, right? He's not doing this against an 8 seed. He's doing this against their biggest rivals with the Lakers and the Grizzlies and all those teams that are, knocking at the door every year in the West. So Jamal Murray is absolutely worth this contract given the economical, state of the NBA, because obviously these contracts are just getting ridiculously out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
You got role players who are making $25-30 million, and they're 7th or 8th on their bench, right? This is a guy who's a genuine star.
Value. It's market value.
Exactly.
It's not out of the realm of like, where the hell did that contract or that number come from? If Denver didn't do it, some other team would have. And that's just the simple economics of what basketball is now.
Listen, if Dak Prescott can be a $60 million quarterback, Jamal Murray is a $50 million NBA player.
I could not, as an Eagles fan, love that contract anymore. Unless they gave him 65. Like
I wanted to sneak that in there because I knew that you wanted to talk about that, given what happened with Dallas over the last little bit. They're ruining their roster one small piece at a time. CD, obviously, worth the money because he's arguably the best receiver in the game right now. But Dak Prescott being the highest paid quarterback for the 3rd time in his career, not just the first, this is the 3rd time in his career that Dak Prescott has been the top paid quarterback player in the league. So congratulations, Jerry. Anyways, that's my non-Canadian segment of the show today.
Just A+ GMing going on in Jerry World down there, and it could not make me any happier that Dak is going to be under center at that price tag. But the real losers in all of this are the Las Vegas Raiders, because I genuinely thought that Dak was going to walk and he was going to take over for O'Connell / Minshew mania out there in the desert, and that was going to be your new face of Allegiant Stadium. But what can you do? I will happily let them spend Jerry's money in new and ever head-scratching ways.
We will absolutely, to the Las Vegas Raiders, the Pittsburgh faithful will absolutely accept Max Crosby in return for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that seems like a fair deal. Let's do that.
But yeah. Anyway, so congratulations to Jamal for securing that contract. And speaking of contracts, we talked about this last week with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. with the Toronto Blue Jays and why hasn't he been signed to an extension yet. We also mentioned that Bichette has obviously been on the other side of things, saying that, well, not really giving you much as to, I want to play for the Blue Jays long term. Yeah, I want to do this. It's mostly been silence. And as you know, when there's silence coming from any type of athlete or team, people assume the absolute worst. And I think we're guilty of that too, right?
No. Disagree.
Yeah. Be that as it may, earlier this week, Bichette actually came out and said, I actually want to play for the Toronto Blue Jays for the rest of my career. I want to, win a championship with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We came up together as 18-year-olds, and now we're here kind of as the faces of this franchise. This is where I want to be and where I want, what I want to do long term. Are you buying that for what it is face value, or are you just saying he needs to say that, it's been too quiet, he's coming out and doing what he needs to do to kind of up his value on the other market? Like, where do you think he's going with that?
Well. How the turntables have. In the famous words of Michael Scott right there. But I mean, listen, this is a little bit of gamesmanship here. Whether he believes it or not, who knows? I think at the end of the day, if some other team were to dangle just a massive contract in front of him and give him an out from the Blue Jays, would he take even 2 seconds to consider it? Probably not. He's going to go wherever the money goes here. So I think the Blue Jays, from a team standpoint here, need to look at this as the following. You have an off season of change coming up in front of you. Aside from as we already discussed, right? Vladdy Guerrero being untouchable. It's not too many other people on that roster or even within their system that I would consider unmovable at this point, right? So my approach would be you go into all these GM winter meetings, whether it's going to be on the West Coast, whether it's going to be down in Boca Raton, wherever the hell they hold them, and you kind of dangle Bichette out there, right? You're not coming out in the media and saying, guess what? He's on the trade block. We're trying to move him. We're this, that, the other. But, whether it ever makes a headline or not, these discussions happen about probably 98% of the players. There's not too many people who are phoning up the Yankees and being like, so what's it going to take for Judge? Because they know he's not going to get moved, right? But anyone else is usually on the table. So if, other than a very, very select few number of players, these discussions happen. Whether they go anywhere, it kind of depends on the situation. But I would be quietly shopping him behind the scenes and just seeing what is the market kind of telling us that he's worth right now. Then you look at, all right, if we were to bring him back, do we think that value add of having Bo Bichette in our lineup and locking him up long term outweighs what franchise A, B, and C here are saying that they'll give to us? Because I'm at kind of a point right now with the Blue Jays as far as there shouldn't be any untouchables beyond Guerrero. So if you can get something that will improve your roster, you have to absolutely do it. And it doesn't matter if he's a homegrown talent and, we came up together. It's a nice story, but nice stories more often than not don't win championships. And if you're not here to hoist a World Series trophy, what are we doing? Right? Become an interior designer that can get contracted to come in and revamp Rogers Center there. Like again, it's one of those things where I think a lot of it is going to hinge on what are the Jays doing with their front office. Are Atkins and Shapiro just getting rolled back? Because they've probably got a little bit more loyalty than if at the end of the season we go, boom, sweeping change, new manager, new GM, new everything, right? They could come in there and pull a trigger a lot faster than the current regime does. So that's the first domino to fall. But whether it's a new regime or the current one still calling the shots, I would be very quietly dangling them out there and just seeing what does the rest of the league value Bichette at? And then you have those internal conversations with the rest of your war room and say, do you like package A or are we bringing back Bichette?
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely how you have to look at it this offseason. This is where I think you can kind of get creative with your approach to Bo Bichette because you can let him kind of dictate what his future is going to be. So we mentioned signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's the first domino to fall. I think that absolutely stays the same, whether Bo Bichette is part of that or not. But here's how you can play that. He said all these things about being, Vladdy's best friend, and we want to do this together. We've come up since we were 18. Sign Vladdy to that maximum contract that you're looking at signing. And watch out. No. Well, you could do that. But, I mean, you're spending all this money on Gossman and Springer and Barrios, and, you can't really cry for it. But look at how Bichette handles that scenario. Because he's saying all that stuff now, and Vladdy's not signed. But envy is a very, very, very deadly thing to have in any type of locker room. And if you're sitting there and your friend who you just came up with and said all these great things about signs this massive contract and you're kind of still hanging out there, might be a little precarious to see, how Bo handles that situation. So I think that you can play it like that. And maybe, again, if he's truly wanting to be there, he's going to come in and say, look, guys, I understand, I just had an off year, but based on my previous, run in the last, 3-4 years, here's where I think I'm worth. Obviously, I'm not going to get Vladdy's contract, but if he kind of comes in, and with that humble approach, I think absolutely you bring him back. But if you look at the scenario of you pay Vladdy, and then all of a sudden Bo comes in and says, I want that same contract. Shortstops are way more valuable than first baseman, yada, yada, yada. That's when I think you could say, okay, you just made our decision for us. We're going to go out and see what the market's like for you and then get the maximum return. So I think regardless of whether you want to bring Bichette back or not, signing that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract is going to absolutely move the needle one way or the other for you and make the decision a lot easier. Because then you can justifiably go to ownership and the fan base and say, hey, we wanted to bring him back, but his expectations were just so unrealistic. We couldn't. So I think that you can actually gain some brownie points by just doing the simple thing, signing Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and then let the dominoes fall where they may. But anyways, I digress. I hope that Bichette, ends up coming back at a decent, amount of money, because I do think that, again, young shortstops who hit the ball well are very, very few and far between. And if you can have him in back of that lineup the way that he was hitting the ball 2-3 years ago, I think that you're poised to have that breakout season next year that not a lot of people are expecting. So,
well, if you're going to bring him back, the one thing you got going in your favor is at least his agent is Greg Genske and not Scott Boras, because Scott Boras, he's taking that guy right to free agency and testing those waters.
He is not gaining a lot of favor with his clientele right now. Because what is it? Joe Montgomery came out and said
Jordan Montgomery, yeah.
Jordan Montgomery, yeah, he butchered it.
See, Montgomery Burns.
Yeah, Jay Montgomery. Let's just put it that way. But anyways, let's hope that we get some more excitement out of the Blue Jays off season, as we mentioned several times, than we did last year. Closing off tonight, just a couple of quick hitters. So, just happened to be flicking through the channels last night, and just so happened to see our greatest all-time Canadian wrestler on a wrestling show, Bret Hart, making a surprise appearance at the Calgary WWE Raw last night. It's fantastic. He's looking old, I got to say. It kind of humbles you a little bit when you're watching. It's like, man, I remember watching this guy when he was in his, early mid-20s, and now he's an old man now.
Well,
right?
Anyone who goes gray, when you keep it so long that you're still doing the ponytail in the back there,
yeah,
adds about 10 years onto you. If he shaved it down there, and probably be looking more like Shane McMahon than, the Crypt Keeper at this point. But
yeah, it still sounds the same. But anyways, it was great to see Bret Hart. Like, it's been a long time since I think he's been on TV, so it was nice to see. And
from that same episode as well, too. Quick golf clap here to fellow Canadian wrestler Sami Zayn, coming out rocking the Johnny Gaudreau jersey in Calgary. Very classy gesture right there. I know that the fans appreciated it, and again, just goes to show that how deeply this whole Gaudreau experience has affected every realm of sports, not just the hockey world as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that was great to see as well. And again, because we're a Canadian show, Kyle's talked about the Americas way too much tonight. We'll close it out and
with
say
Guatemala.
We'll close it out with a pretty historic golf clap that we've been saving for the end of the show, because the Canadian men's national team went down on U.S. soil and won a soccer game against the U.S. men's national team. So stick that in your craw, Kyle, for your love of the U.S. on this Canadian sports show. But golf clap for the Canadian men's soccer team for, again, breaking another barrier in their history. I mean, they just keep coming. So
first time since 1957 that they beat the U.S. on U.S. soil. So again, like you were saying, it's another feather in the cap of this program here. And, Jesse Marsh is just going out there saying how he's been so embraced by Canadians and everything since he's kind of taken over this program, and you just can't say enough good things about it. They're really building a very, very special culture with the senior men's national team. And it's so great to see, because for soccer fans, you had obviously the Christine Sinclairs and the phenomenal run that the Canadian women have been on and continue to be on, that Paris run, overcoming what they overcame to advance. I think it was just an adrenaline dump of, oh, we finally did it. We moved on. And then to lose in, penalty shootout there. I can't say I was surprised, but just the emotional roller coaster that you're on shows how much grit they have and still performing at such a high level. But that has been missing from the men's side for so many long decades. Forget years, decades here. So the fact that they're now just seeming to topple these firsts, first since 1957, first ever time, advancing in the Copa, like all of these things could not be happening at a better time and setting up for when Canada will actually be partially hosting the World Cup soon. So this window to compete could not be lining up any better. And it's a very, very exciting time if you're a soccer fan north of the border here.
Yeah, and let's hope when they host, it's better security than what we saw in Miami.
Man, I know a few vents that are going to be unguarded there. So if we want to sneak in to Commonwealth or wherever, well, we can get there.